Hey, good afternoon, guys. This is Dr. Rob, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. This is the Recovery Channel podcast. I'm coming live for you from San Antonio, nice and sunny today. And Jen is coming to you from
Sedona, and it's snowing here today.
Oh, no way. Really? Awesome.
Yeah.
I love the snow. I love the snow. It snowed here for about 2 hours, but it didn't stick. But yeah, I want to go to a snowy place once and learn how to ski. You're never too old to learn how to ski, Jen.
I agree. I just haven't. I mean, when I was younger, I have, but I never got into it. I always played sports, and if I got hurt skiing, then I couldn't play sports or do my job or whatever the thing was. So, anyways, But we played the snow on Friday, and that was really fun. And so, yeah, we had a winter storm coming in. I have to tell you though, after this, I'm ready for some weather again.
Yeah. You might have to take another trip to Texas.
I might.
With a spare seat. That's all I'm saying about that. Until we shall see what happens. Guys, Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here today. I can see there's a few people on already. Don't forget, guys, Daddy, Please Stop Drinking is the book from me, and the Addiction Diaries from Jen. If you want a free copy of them signed and you're in the USA, please let me know. I will box them off to you in the next day or two, and you'll have them. Apart from that, we got Bill Stauffer on the show today. Great guy with a bunch of experience, 35 years clean and sober, same as me, alcohol, and great stories to sell. So stick around, guys. We'll be right back with Bill after this. Welcome back, guys. This is the Recovery Channel podcast. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. Bill Stauffer's on the show. Good afternoon, Bill. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
We're doing good. We're doing really good. It's fine. Everyone thinks that me and Jen are sat in the same studio sometimes, but we only met a couple of months ago, and we do this show twice a week. So, yeah, we're doing really good, Bill, really good. So tell us something about yourself for our viewers.
Well, you had mentioned I'm a person in long-term recovery. It means to me I haven't had to use a drink or a drug since I was 21 years old. I call myself a formerly young person still in recovery, and I've just tremendously enjoyed the journey and the kinds of things that I've been able to do. So I'm just glad to be on here on your show today.
I love that. So what are you able to do today in recovery that you weren't able to do when you were using?
Wow, what a question. You know, I didn't think that I could live life without drugs and alcohol. And it does run in my family, and I've lost 2 family members to it. But, you know, every single thing that I do now in my life are things that I did not think are possible. Even being here on your show and talking publicly to people would have scared the death out of me before. The kinds of things, I'm an educator. I teach social work at a university here in Pennsylvania. I run a nonprofit. Most everything I do from the moment I wake up in the morning until I go to bed at night are things that I thought were impossible. I'm a writer. I do a bunch of writing with different people. And so for people out there listening, you know, recovery it gives you the ability to do all the things that you didn't think that you could do in your life. So I don't know. It's almost a limitless list.
Exactly. Sobriety gives you everything that alcohol promised you. My sponsor told me that years ago, and I was the same, Bill, actually, and believe it or not, and Jen's going to go, no way. But when I couldn't speak to nobody, I was the guy that if you pointed in a meeting or at college to go, hey, what do you think? I'd go bright red. I won't be able to speak, and all of a sudden in recovery, it's like the doors are open. You can do anything you want as long as you put your mind to it. You know, where did it all start for you, Bill?
When did it start or stop?
With the alcohol. Yeah, when did the alcohol abuse start?
Well, so I actually started other substances too at age 11. And people hear that and they think, well, what was wrong that you started at such a young age? And it was really simple. I came from a decent family, but I was hanging out with older kids. And the very best way for the older kids to keep the younger kid from telling on them is to have the younger kid use too. So I made the decision to smoke pot. That's where I started with an 11-year-old brain, and the people that brought me along, they made those decisions with a 15-year-old brain. And that's really common in addiction. Like, I wasn't making a conscious decision, oh, I'm going to embark on a life of using drugs and alcohol. I just wanted to hang out with the older kids.
That's interesting. So what did the older kids give you that you couldn't get on your own or with kids your age?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to hang out and be like the older kids. So, you know, they started smoking pot and I didn't really think about it. So I did too. And then once I did what a lot of young people did. I took it to school and shared it with all my friends. I mean, addiction is kind of like a communicable condition, you know, and we need to think about it like that. We also need to think about recovery like that too, because recovery spreads as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's contagious. Contagious, absolutely. I know when I recovered from the disease of alcoholism, which just means I'm getting one's health and state of mind back. People started to change around me, and the gifts are just limitless. That I've lost count how many times I've gone into a meeting and someone said, "Do you remember me, Rob, from like 25 years ago?" I'm like, "Not really." "Oh yeah, you said this, and I'm 24 years sober." And you think, how many people are we affecting with this? You know, it must be millions with the ripple effect. You know, it must be phenomenal. I always ask this question because I'm really intrigued because it happened to me. When you took that first drink, okay, that first drink of alcohol, not the marijuana and stuff, how did you feel? Did you know it was an instant like gift or gold or whatever it may be, or was it just gradual, you grew into it?
So my first sip of alcohol that I recall, I think I was a little bit younger, and I had a grandfather who, I come from an Irish background, and it was Drambuie, and I had a cold. Oh. Here, kid, try this. You know, it'll help your throat. And I like, as you can hear me now, I recall that as like something I really, really liked. And addiction, including alcohol, occurred very, very rapidly with me. So I ended up with a high. If you have I have a clinical background, so I've run residential and outpatient programs and things. So like I had a very rapid onset of tolerance, which is not a great sign for having a substance use disorder.
No, it's not actually. Yeah. I was actually just talking to my mom the other day about how she said, I literally thought that you were born without nerves because my pain tolerance was so high. And although I don't check in as an addict in terms of alcohol or drugs, my children are my qualifiers in that. I have other disorders. But I think that high pain tolerance or that low pain tolerance for alcohol is the thing that really like has it's a roadmap for the rest of your life. And I actually want to step into this conversation around pain tolerance and isolation. Mm-hmm. So we're in the middle of a pandemic and we have an opioid and drug and alcohol epidemic right now. And there's a lot of isolation inside the world of drugs and alcohol. And there's a lot of isolation that we're all experiencing right now. And knowing that you had that tolerance, that level of tolerance, what can you begin to talk about, and what does it bring up for you around the state of our world that we're in right now?
You know, it's a really complex issue, and I've had a couple opportunities to write and talk about this, including with Bill White, who's a well-known writer in the recovery space, and testify in front of our Pennsylvania General Assembly about the impact of COVID-19 on the recovery community. And it has been dramatic. But, you know, I will say for me personally, I've had to really change what I do to take care of myself as in the 10 months or so that we've been in the pandemic. And I've had to pay more attention to self-care, calling people and talking to people more often who understand me, as well as self-care. Like I'm going out in the woods a whole lot more. because nature is a thing for me. I'm actually a bird watcher, believe it or not. It's a way that I can sort of slow myself down, and I've been doing more of that just to make sure that I take care of myself. And I have not had to pay as much attention to those kinds of things as I have right now. The impact on our whole community has been dramatic. And in the very early days of the pandemic, I think one of the great untold stories about the recovery community is we simply moved everything online. So within a period of about 10 days in mid-March of last year, most of the recovery support networks and groups moved all of their things online. We just all did it. And that has been helpful because it has allowed people a place to go, but there are also limitations in that. And that's something that we also, I think, have to have conversations on.
Well, it is. I'm sorry, really quick.
No, it's okay.
And the thing that Dr. Rob and I have been doing is, luckily, we had been doing telehealth long before this, which was helpful. But the thing that I notice is that people are really missing that human to heart connection, looking in each other's eyes and being able to see the movement of bodies and experience that. Can you talk a little bit about what you're experiencing out there?
Yeah, and it's exactly what you're saying. And actually, I've done training on telehealth with peer recovery. Actually, I did in person down in San Antonio with your San Antonio recovery group about 2 years ago. And I say this. When I was coming to terms with having an addiction problem, and I had a lot of remorse and a lot of shame, and so when I was able to go into a room of people, and for the first time when I said, my name is Bill and I'm an alcoholic, I was sort of looking to see whether they judged me anywhere like the way that I had judged myself. And what I found, just because I'm sitting there in the room with people, is a lot of understanding and a lot of support. And it was something that I felt as much as what was communicated to me simply by being in a room with that group of people, because a lot of human interaction is nonverbal. And so you kind of feel it. Telehealth, we lose that. And so, I think we have to be careful about that. I've done a lot of discussion with people on this. It seems like people fall into two groups. One, people are really liking peer services through telehealth because it's convenient. They don't have to travel. They can connect on. You could get on a telehealth in Italy or Scotland, or you can sort of meet with people that you wouldn't normally meet, or others who miss that personal interaction.
Yeah, I think it's important. A lot, especially kids. I've got 5,000 friends on Facebook, and it's basically just plugged to the wall. Is what you are, my man. We need that. We need that contact, and that's where the fellowship comes in. As some 12-step programs, very important that we're mixed with like-minded people all the time. I don't think we've seen you've got to look at the long-term effects. We haven't seen the damage caused yet. I mean, they say alcohol and drug abuse has gone up by X amount or X percent. We don't know the full amount. How many alcoholics admit they're alcoholics? What, 20% before they get called out? Probably 30% with drugs. I think it's going to be in the millions of people. The ripple effects of divorces, loss of kids, loss of lives. That's for sure with everything. Well, what do you think the long-term effect is, Bill? Let's say 5 years of what's happening now.
And again, this is something I think about a great deal. And I'd back it up and say, I think when people talk about the opioid epidemic, I think they're missing something, because we've had an addiction epidemic for multiple decades in this country. And so actually overdose rates were going up before opioids were in fashion. Then alcohol use has been increasing also for a period of time, as well as suicides. And there's a link to substances with all these things. And they're linked to something called deaths of despair. And sociologists are looking at these deaths of despair and saying there's a loss of hope for the future, a loss of purpose. People don't feel like they have a direction forward or things that are meaningful to them, and a loss of connection. So this loss of hope, purpose, and connection has fueled addiction across our society for a period of time. Add in the pandemic, and all of those things are really exacerbated. Like they increase. That we're more isolated. People have less hope and less purpose. And so, like here in Pennsylvania, we saw alcohol sales go up 55% in the early stages of the epidemic, or rather in the pandemic. And we do definitely know that people are drinking more, people are using more. And I think that, as you said, that the addiction impact of the pandemic is going to eclipse the deaths related to actual COVID-19. So we're in the early stages of dealing with the addiction element of this pandemic, and we should be really thinking ahead, particularly to the group that's at highest risk is our healthcare professionals and people who are on the front line who are dealing with a tremendous amount of trauma right now. They're going to need a lot of help in coming years. That's what I think.
Yeah, and so talk to me about what you think that the help that they're going to need. Like, what is the thing that we're going to have to support them?
I mean, I don't entirely know, but I know that right now they're using substances. Many are using substances to sort of soothe the trauma, and so we need to reduce stigma around people having substance use disorders. We still think in society that it's those people instead of our people, and the reality is, first responders, police, fire, paramedics, healthcare professionals are all at higher risk. And the conversations need to occur there so that there's an acknowledgement that these are risk factors. And then we need to gear up to have the right kind of services and support for them. And we simply haven't done that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Guys, Bill Stauffer's on the show. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. That was Life Over Addiction for those guys just on podcast. Lance Wright is a transformational life coach, such a great guy. He says, let me help you navigate your life's path back to one of purpose and meaning. The chains of shame and guilt no longer have to hold us back. He says, let's start a new conversation. You can visit him on his website, lifeoveraddiction.com, or email him info@lifeoveraddiction.com. Or why not call Lance direct, 310-890-2337. That's 310-890-2337. Such a great guy. Welcome back to the show, guys. Bill, let me have. Where's your shame? Where was your shame in the past?
Where was my shame?
Yeah. What was it and where was it?
Well, I think having a problem, and so I recognized fairly early that when I used, it was not like how other people use. So, the story I tell is that I sort of made a list of people who seemed to be able to use like I did and didn't get in the trouble that I did. So, like, I thought there was something wrong with me as a person that I ended up in blackouts and getting into trouble that I had not intended to get into. And so I thought there was a character problem, like I had some kind of character problem that this was happening to me. And I felt very badly about that. Couple decades in, none of the people on my list were actually able to use successfully either. I can see that now. But I had a lot of guilt and shame over those kinds of things happening in my life.
So talk to me about what was happening in your household that attributed to some of your addiction.
Well, yeah, at the time, my father worked in the steel industry. Bethlehem. I come from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is a steel town. And actually, not just in my household, but in our whole community, a lot of our parents were losing their jobs or at risk for losing their jobs. So also a lot of the families in our areas, their attention was on whether they're going to lose their job. And a lot of us kids were running around experimenting with drugs and alcohol because of the attention on external matters, I don't think that our parents were as closely monitoring that. It was also almost like a more permissive era too. Although that's actually the truth now too. So there was a lack of attention on what was occurring. And so it was allowed to sort of steamroll.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, I could imagine. So I've studied the brain for 27, 28 years. Neuroplasticity is the latest thing that I study, and I work with loads of alcoholics. We both do, me and Jen. I want to ask a question, but before I do, let me just tell the guys listening. When we talk about trauma, we don't talk about normal trauma. The addicted brain has trauma that the normal brain doesn't have because they're remapping at birth. So trauma to the addicted brain would be something like, get down off that chair, Rob, you stupid idiot. That's trauma with the addicted brain. We're very sensitive. We'll remap the brain with that when it comes to alcoholism, not so much addiction. That's another show that you'd be interested in. Alcohol acts differently on the brain. So the question is, Bill, where was your trauma?
Well, I think some of the trauma from experiencing addiction and waking up in places that I had not intended to be in, or with people I didn't intend to be with, was really traumatic for me, and just not knowing with any predictability what was going to happen to me. And so when that happens with people with addiction, it can be traumatic. And I ended up in situations where I was taken advantage of, or where I ended up doing things that I wouldn't do, and that caused a lot of trauma because I didn't know what would happen to me next. Because addiction is when I took the first drink or the first drug, I didn't know the next thing that would happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so talk to me a little bit about how your parents dealt with your addiction. I mean, you were pretty young at the age of 21 when you got sober. So, how did they get the help that they needed?
I mean, the short answer is they didn't. I think that they didn't fully recognize what was going on. And probably because there was a sense that, and you'll see this attitude in society now too, is that there's a sense that young people will do what young people will do. And so they didn't actually see everything that was going on. They saw maybe 10% of it. And so they saw a couple problems, but like a lot of kids, I was pretty good at hiding the full extent of what was occurring. So they didn't really, I don't think they fully recognized that it was occurring. And I would have to say that my story might be a little atypical because it wasn't an intervention from my family that led me to get help. I actually ended up getting a DUI and recognizing at that time, because there are other people around me with substance use disorders, that I was as bad as they were. And I was, 21 years old, and it was only going to get downhill there. So they didn't fully recognize what was occurring with me.
Hold on, Rob. That is such a bummer. I think that is such a bummer, in that it is, to me, so important that the parents have the recognition of what is going on. Because for me, my children's addiction was the thing that woke my soul up.
Yeah.
And it, when people say like, oh, we're going to have an intervention for our child, I really believe it's the families that are getting the intervention and not the addict or the alcoholic. And that's the thing that actually needs to change. And so it kind of bums me out to think that your parents didn't get to be a part of that. How did they were they ever able to recognize that A, there was an issue, and B, did they ever get to look at themselves and see how they participated in the family disease?
Well, I think you're right. Absolutely. In families that can do that, that is a really critically important part of healing. And as a clinician, I've supported and assisted other families through that process. I think in my own family, some of it was normalized because of the larger family dynamics. Mine is not the first generation in my family that has struggled with substance use disorders. So, like in some ways, we sort of normalize things that shouldn't have been normalized. And to answer your second part of your question, there had been some healing. There has been some recognition of that. But I would say, frankly, also, because I still have active substance use in my family, it is also, and I don't know about you, Rob, but in with people who have that in their families or close friends, sometimes we can end up being a little isolated from them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, without a doubt. It's definitely a predisposition that's generations and generations. Again, drug addiction is slightly different, and I want to get into that one day, but alcoholism, you can trace back through generations. Might skip a generation, might skip sister or brother sooner or later, but it's in. The only problem we have with tracking that, we found, is back in the day, going back 30, 40, 50 years ago, grandfather liked a drink was the phrase they used. Instead of granddad was falling over everything and was a chronic alcoholic, he liked to drink. I always found that in my family that we come across. So give me one of your worst times of your life and one of the best times of your life.
I will. And I will just say that on the family history stuff, somewhere on my family tree 3 or 4 generations ago, there's a note that one of the persons liked paregoric, which you may know. That is a form of opium for people who may not know. So, worst times. I think it wasn't a particular event, but waking up every day, recognizing that much of what I was going to touch was not going to go well or is going to be destructive. Was that the things that I was doing were hurting people around me. Back to what was being said before. I think to some degree, I'm sort of a sensitive person, and so like if I have an internal microphone, I'm kind of turned up to 9 or 10, and I pick up a lot of what's going on around me. Substances sort of help me moderate that a little. In recovery, I've learned how to cope with that, but just recognizing and feeling the impact that I was having on people around me was horrible. The best things have really been watching other people being part of recovery for people, in my community. There's people that I've worked with 20 years ago, and they have families and jobs and grandchildren, and just watching recovery spread has been an amazing thing.
It is an amazing thing. I'm curious from that place. You're a clinician. It sounds like social worker. You're out there helping and supporting. What do you want people to really know about what you do and the Voices of Recovery and what you're trying to create so to help not only opioid addiction, but just addiction and period? What are you doing?
So the first thing is, my background is running like traditional treatment services, like residential and outpatient. Currently, I run our statewide recovery community organization, and that's about strengthening recovery across our communities. And, I was talking about those deaths of despair and loss of hope, purpose, and connection. The real lesson about recovery, and if you guys have studied resilience, this, is that connection to other people is tremendously important for growth. We know that recovery happens in community, that people recover together, and through the things like development of recovery capital. So if you're surrounded by, if you happen to be in a community where there's a lot of active recovery, your chances of getting into recovery are earlier in life are better, and your chances of staying in recovery are greater. So that's what our work is. We're trying to strengthen recovery efforts across the state of Pennsylvania, and I've actually been involved with some stuff nationally to do that as well. So what I would want the public to know about is we want to think about recovery greater than providing like a simple service, but actually strengthening recovery efforts in our community so that people can get into recovery earlier and stay in recovery more often.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Guys, Bill Stauffer is on the show. Give us 2 seconds. A word from our sponsor. We'll be right back. Hey guys, welcome back to Living Recovery Interventions. Recovery begins today. Recovery begins together, says Travis. Give the gift of recovery. We love Travis. We're both good friends of his. Jen met him last week, talking about a guy that went from Xanaxesia to a car crash at 120 miles an hour. He says, if a loved one is in trouble, call him 801-573-4188 or visit the website livingrecoveryinterventions.com. And remember, guys, recovery begins today. Recovery begins together. 801-573-4188. They did a test. I always go back to this with mice some years ago, and they had 10 mice, and they put them in individual cages, and they got a water dispenser and a water and cocaine dispenser, and 9 out of the 10 mice took the cocaine every time, which was, everyone knew that was going to happen. Then they took the 10 mice and they put them all in the same cage. And the same dispensers were done. 9 out of the 10 took the water and not the cocaine. So what did we learn from that? We learned that as a community or a fellowship, it's a lot easier when we surround ourselves by like-minded people, and we don't need outside sources to make us good. Now, a lot of people, would agree with that or wouldn't. Depends. But we can't do this on our own. Is that what you find, Bill? Like, if you're on your own trying to do this, you don't really stand a chance if you're the real alcoholic or drug addict.
Well, I think, substance use disorders, including alcoholism, are complicated. We know that there's a genetic component to this, although it's not a single gene. So, we think of it, more as on a continuum, like a spectrum kind of condition. But if you have severe substance use disorders, your chances of recovering alone aren't very good. If you have a less severe version, and we're not really great at measuring any of this yet. So, as a clinician, I'm more likely to consider someone having a severe form because we don't know whether it's a more moderate form and they're not as far along, or whether they're severe and they just haven't gone that far. Is that the best chance of people getting into recovery are the right kind of services, and then connecting them with recovery with the community.
And I'm really curious about today in COVID. Is it possible to have people show up, have meeting after meeting, hour after hour, so that 6 people can show up in a room and have community with masks and have it be safe? Is it possible to begin to open things up so that people can begin having this one-on-one connection, so that we not only can begin saving each other's lives, but that we can have real, true connection with one another? Because it just feels like that's one of the things that I hear is, I don't want to go on those meetings, Jen. I don't want to go on those meetings because I don't feel connected. What do you have to say about any of that?
Well, I mean, it's already occurring. Like in my community in the fall, people started to meet in parks where they could sit, a little bit farther away. We have groups that are going hiking together even now, where they'll stay physically distant, but they'll get together, and then they'll sit in a large circle and talk. So, people are finding ways to establish community. What's the most difficult is from people who don't already have those established connections may have difficulty finding those things. So, right. I do know a number of local, recovery fellowships that are doing in-person meetings, but it's not the norm right now. So, I think hopefully as we move through this pandemic, we will get back to that. Not saying that telehealth isn't good. I think it will be great to augment things, but that personal connection is vital.
Yeah,
definitely. It is going forward. And is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? We don't know. So, like you said, the Zoom ones are the best. We use Zoom because it's the only HIPAA compliant software out there. So Zooms are good, but we just need that. I mean, I know I do. We have a meeting every Saturday morning that's face to face, and I don't know how it'd be without that. It's great to pop on Zoom meetings. Don't get me wrong, but it's that connection, like Jen just said. It's the connection that we're missing and we can't have. What's the best thing you like about what you do today, Bill?
I'm a believer in service. Somebody who is older and wiser than me said, about addiction is either I'm going to help people or I'm going to hurt them. So what he was basically saying is, if I'm not involved in service to others, I'm probably not in a great place, and I may end up doing things that aren't great in the long run. And so service in any way that I can, helping another person in the recovery, volunteering, I'm helping with the vaccine distribution and getting vaccines out to people. I'm a believer in community. So, getting outside of myself and helping another individual in any way that I can helps me get through my day. And so it is still possible to do that in COVID-19, and connect with people. But I really encourage people to do that because it's working for me.
Yeah. And what do you want people to know? What is the thing that you want to leave people with in terms of how to get the help, how to continue to support yourself inside of recovery? If you're in the midst of an addiction or, addicted to alcohol or drugs or any addiction for that matter, where can they either find the help either locally in your state or generally? What do you want to leave people with?
Well, one thing I would do is to just keep trying. If you keep trying, you will make it, and it may not be that you make it on the first attempt, but you have to keep trying. We also know about humans in general. Like I said, everything that I do today are things that I found impossible. The more that you challenge yourself with doing a difficult thing, the easier it gets to do. And so that's how we strengthen our lives. How to get help here in PA? We have a Department of Drug and Alcohol, and they have a 1-800 Get Help Now phone number, or they could call their local single county authorities. And generally speaking, that's how I want people to connect with our formal treatment system, but also reach out in the community. Like on our website, there are links to all kinds of 12-step fellowships and other supports out there. But more than anything else, I would tell people to keep trying because that's the most important thing.
Excellent. I love that, Bill. Guys, Bill Stauffer was on the show. Such an amazing guy. Bill, I want to just recognize you for a couple of things. First of all, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your information. You're a very informational guy, and your time obviously is precious, and we appreciate that. Always giving back. I want to thank you as a person. I've done some research on you, and the stuff you do is phenomenal. The teams and the companies and the movements that you're involved with is very admirable. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing that, because I know it isn't easy. I know that we hardly get any attaboys for it most of the time, and we never get recognized for it. And the human being needs a couple of attaboys, whether we like it or not. Otherwise, how do we know we're doing a good job? So I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for being on the show. Thank you so much indeed, Bill.
Thank you very much. You guys all be safe, and everybody out there, keep doing the next right thing.
The next right thing, and more will be revealed. Bill, thank you so much for being on our show. Thanks for talking real talk with us around addiction. Thanks for being honest and open about your own struggles in the addiction world and recovery. And thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you in the community.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Hey guys, welcome back. This is the Recovery Channel podcast with Dr. Rob and Jennifer Lovely. It was great to be here, guys. Such a phenomenal guest. I hope you enjoyed that. Did you enjoy it, Jen? I did. I thought it was pretty informational.
I enjoyed it so much. I'm laughing because it's snowing so hard right now, and there's a guy across the way in the parking lot doing donuts in the parking lot. Everybody's got to find their inner child. Yeah, no, I totally enjoyed listening to him. And it's so nice to know that in all parts of our country that people are doing the work for recovery, that it is really, it's one day at a time, it's one person at a time, it's one conversation at a time, that is where the healing is. And I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Guys, don't forget, if you want a free book signed and stuff like that, it's just give us a message, either me or Jen. the Addiction Diaries or Daddy Daddy Please Stop Drinking. We've also got some cups or some mugs that we'll be introducing at the end of next week, and with the Recovery Channel podcast on it. Just a little logo and who we're about. If you want a free one of those, you're going to have to send in, and probably we may send you one. It's not for everybody. They're very exclusive. Can't just have one. You're not going to find these on Amazon. That's for sure. Unless we get desperate, Jen, then we'll put them on Amazon at $10 each. You never know. Hey guys, thank you so much.
No, let's just
you know what? Go on. Yeah.
Oh,
go on.
I was just going to say, if you really want, reach out to us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We'll be back on Wednesday. Yes, ma'am.
Really send it.
Breaking. I must be that snow over there.
Bye,
Jen. You're
guys.
breaking like crazy. Bye, guys. We'll see you on Wednesday and Friday.